Hello students, I hope you are well. Today's lesson is on sports technology. It's a huge area. As always, in order to access the lower grade, you need to just give me the basic facts. Tell me what, that's the red. If you want to access the middle grade, you need to apply it to sport. Give me sporting examples. Tell me how, that's in blue. And if you want to access the higher grade, you need to be critically evaluative. You need to tell me the strengths, and particularly important in this area, the weaknesses. People are quite good on the strengths, but they forget to discuss the weaknesses if this is an extended question in your exam. Okay, a typical exam fault is that students do not read the questions. So you might get a really broad questions for a lot of marks that ask you to discuss technology in sport, and you only talk about how it helps the official. You always go into VAR and that's all you ever talk about. But if it's a broad question like that, it's not just about how technology helps the official, it's also about how sports technology benefits the performer, the spectator and the coach. It might be that the question is for smaller marks and it asks you just to say how sports technology helped the coach. And then you have to talk about just how it helps the coach, not the performer, the spectator or the official. So it's no good knowing all of this if you don't read the question. That's from the off. Alright, let me just take you over to here first of all please, because it is important that we contextualize a little and talk about the relationship between technology, recreation and commercialization. Alright, so at an elite level, elite performers use technology to achieve those marginal gains, that 100th of a second that makes the difference between bronze and gold. So what happens then is that technology is publicized by the owners of those companies, and it makes money for those companies. And recreational sportsmen think, I know, well, if it's good enough for elite performers, then it's good enough for me. If Team Ineos or Team Sky before that are spending £8,000 on a road bike, I'm going to spend £8,000 on a road bike. If an international swimmer, Olympic swimmer, is going to spend £200 on a drag reduction swimming outfit, then I'm going to do that as well. So that there is a huge relationship between technology and commercialization now. The problem is a little bit that the product is seen as elite and not the performer, when it's normally the performer that makes most of the difference and the technology helps, it puts icing on the cake. But those two things are getting more and more merged, more and more blurred. Alright, so as I said, when you talk about technology in sport, we have to go to those four areas. Technology for the performer, spectator, official and coach. I'm going to take each one in turn. So, remember, for the performer at that elite level, it's about marginal gains. The lower the standard you play, the more gain that you can make. So when you start, you make huge gains, and that gains actually plateaus when you get to that elite level. So we're looking for those minute differences, those minute gains, those marginal gains. Alright, so what kind of things can the performer do? What technology can he use to improve? Well, first of all, it's about training methods and programs. There is training program software which will help him plan microcycles, mesocycles and macrocycles to make his training as effective as possible. A microcycle is training for that 1 week, Monday to Sunday. You might have rest days in there, obviously, but it might be that over that 1 week he does some weight training, he does some plyometric training, he does some flexibility training. But it's about planning for that 1 week. A mesocycle is software that helps him plan 2 to 4 weeks, and a macrocycle is software that will help him plan for 4 to 26 weeks. Why do we want to plan these cycles? Well, it helps effective tapering and peaking. So usually, say for example I'm running a marathon, then 14 days before that marathon I'll gradually taper the intensity of my training. I'll reduce the intensity of my training so that on the day of the event I'm at the peak of my physical fitness. Alright? So training program software really helps tapering and peaking. Number 2, development of technique. Well, obviously there's lots of equipment out there to video record, to video analyze technique. It might be a golfer using video technology in order to monitor his swing plane. He might be swinging slightly inside or slightly outside the desired plane. He might be overswinging slightly. His line of attack might be too steep, and that video camera technology will help him to improve his technique to get optimal performance. It might be something like GPS tracking, where you use GPS tracking to monitor how many meters you've covered in a football match, or where those meters are, whether they're in defensive areas or in attacking areas, and you'll use that technology. If you're slightly too defensive and you need to be making more forward runs, he'll use that technology to work it out, to improve his performance. The equipment is one that students normally go to first. There's so many advances in sports equipment, aren't there? From cycle helmets to help streamlining, and to heavier cricket bats with a bigger sweet spot, or lighter hockey sticks with the same power potential. So equipment advances are huge and continue. I've put some more examples here. I've put video analysis software, wind tunnels for things like cyclists. So it might be that their riding position is slightly too upright, so they'll use that wind tunnel to get their optimal body position to help their streamlining, to help them go forward quicker. It might be something like hyperbaric chambers, where it's a chamber or a tent, and you flood it with oxygen to help recovery. It might be a barometric chamber where you actually can reduce oxygen level in that tent. So that's like training at altitude. If there's less oxygen, then the body has to adapt in order to train at your usual intensities. You have to do things like produce more red blood cells, so that when you come back down to sea level, you get the advantages of that kind of that overload training. It might be that you use ice baths. Ice baths, remember, they reduce blood flow, so that when you come out of them, oxygen-rich blood then flows through the muscles and it helps recovery. It might be things like pedometers that something like a high jumper would use. It kind of measures foot placement on the floor, how long, what angles. So a triple jumper would land on his heel, go to his toe, take off. Pedometer, the quicker that process is, the less friction, the greater the forward momentum. Pedometer would measure things like that. Power meters, cyclists use them the whole time. It might be that in the Tour de France and they're on a mountain section, they set their power meter so they know they're working at 40 watts. Someone makes a break, they don't try and follow him, they just keep maintaining that 40 watts, knowing that if they do, they're going to slowly reel in the guy who made the break. He's full of lactic acid, and so they leave it. So things like power meters, GPS, equipment that you can all talk about, but give examples from different sports like I've just done for you. All right, and lastly, analysis. The performer will use video analysis in order to work out his strengths and weaknesses. He'll play back video and he'll work out where he went wrong so that he can improve it for the future. The disadvantages. Obviously, cost is a huge disadvantage. A team in EOS bike, £10,000 to £12,000, that's expensive. GPS technology, that's expensive. Monitors, heart rate monitors, blood pressure monitors, they're expensive. Sometimes we can have a lack, the performer can have a lack of ownership in, he can put his mistakes down to lack of technology. Someone's got better technology than he has and that's why they're winning. So it's important that the performer doesn't have that lack of ownership, that he knows that it's the equipment, the technology supplements his performance. It doesn't make his performance. And also, the more technology you use, the more emphasis is on winning at all costs. So you lose that kind of that amateur value, that it's actually the sport that matters, not winning. It's a sport, not a spectacle. Alright, so technology performer covered. Let's go now to technology for the spectator. This one over here. Now we all know that we don't need to go to an Olympic stadium anymore to watch a world record breaking performance by a discus thrower. It's right there in our living rooms at the touch of a finger. So we get fantastic coverage now. We get great angles. If you're watching a football match, you can press your red button and get all the data about the different players. You can follow just one player if you want on the pitch, or follow an area on the pitch. That engagement from home is unbelievable now. So the spectator benefits from that. The disadvantage? Well, the spectator pays for that as well. So there is a cost here. If you got BT or Sky, then you're looking at £75, £85 a month for total coverage. That's expensive. And again, I've already mentioned it, but it becomes a spectacle rather than a sport with a win at all costs. More and more people who have BT, they have Sky and other platforms, we get more and more commercialisation, more and more sponsorship. We lose that amateur appeal. It's not just about taking part anymore, it's about winning, and all the rigmarole that goes around that. Okay, next let's talk about the official, and this is the one where students just go VAR and that's all they talk about. There's not just VAR that helps officials. There are other things. There's goal line technology. There is, in hockey for example, there is snickometers in cricket. Why do we have these areas of technology now where, because sport is more of a spectacle and because it's viewed on TV, there's increasing pressure on officials to get those decisions right. And so they use things like microphone communication and video technology in order to make those decisions as accurate as they can be. The problem with that, the disadvantages, is that the more and more that officials rely on technology, the less accountability they have. They lose that, the officials lose that human touch, they lose that skill of officiating because they can always go to the technology. And you can discuss whether you think that's good or that's bad. And it's not, the video analysis is not available at all levels of competition. Yes, it's available at that elite level, that Premiership football level, for example, but it's not going to be at semi-professional level. So it's not at all levels. All right. Lastly, let's talk about the benefits to the coach. Well, there are a few key words here that you can get easy marks for. So the first thing you need to talk about is that the coach will use quantitative data. Data that's gathered, factual data, not opinions. He will use that quantitative data to make things like team selections. So, for example, in American sport, in American football and baseball, they look at the facts, they look at the data, and that data will decide on who plays. If player number 10 is covering more metres in a match than player number 9 and they've got to choose between the two, they're going to go for player number 10. It's not just to inform team selection either. It will be used to inform who they buy. They'll look at the data sheets, the quantitative data from players in that league, and they'll decide who they need to fit into the role. Alright, obviously coaches and performers work hand in hand for performance analysis feedback. So they'll use that video technology to see where their strengths and weaknesses were, and also they use that technology to prevent injury. Coaches will also use notational analysis. Now, notational analysis monitors trends. So for example, if I'm a coach and my team is playing Sheffield Wednesday next week, then I might go and get video footage of the last 5 Sheffield Wednesday games, and I'm going to watch the trends of where their players stand when defending corners, so that I can develop a strategy in order to exploit possible weaknesses in their defending policy. Alright? Okay, so we've talked about sports technology for the performer. We've talked about sports technology for the coach. We've talked about sports technology for the official, and we've talked about sports technology for the spectator. Remember, the key to this is please read the question carefully. If it asks you for something about all of it, then you've got to talk about all of it, not just VAR. But if it asks you to specialise, maybe it might be sports technology, the advantages of the spectator, then you have to specialise just here, strengths and weaknesses just here. Tell me how, tell me why. Okay, my GCSE class. What I'd like you to do now, please, is copy this presentation into your blue books, and there's an attachment, a photo attachment on Show My Homework, and could you put that onto your mobile phone library, please? And then could you spend half an hour, 45 minutes just reading over, repetition, looking at it, revising it, and then test yourself or get your parents to test you. Okay, hope you're well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.